We are live right now. Thank you everyone for joining us for this special 30th anniversary conversation discussion on Pump Up the Volume. My name is Jim Brunzell. I'm the Festival Director of Sound Unseen. Thank you everyone who has sponsored the festival, including The Current and KUTX 98.9 here in Austin, Texas. And a big shout out to Melanie Lynn Addington and the Oxford Film Festival for helping us connect with these fine folks today. So thank you, Melanie. I hope you're tuning in from Mississippi.
Hope you're well, Melanie.
Hi,
And
Melanie.
everyone can say hello to Melanie, but I'll just real quick go around the room the Zoom room. We've got writer, director Alan Moyle. And there he goes. And producer Sandy Stern. And actress Samantha Mathis, who plays Nora De Niro.
Yay.
So thank you everyone for joining us today. I'll have some questions. Our audience will have some questions, and we're gonna go back to 1990 here for a good 45 minutes or so. But yes, thank you again, everyone. And I'll start things off. I think this is sort of a simply made question. I rewatched the film the other day. Here's my DVD copy of it. And I noticed that, this film, I know this gets thrown around a lot, but it is 2020. And the film actually, it still seems relevant in 2020 when it was made in 1990. And Alan, I would love it if you could, tell the audience sort of, the beginning of the origins and what got you interested in creating Pump Up the Volume.
As far as I can remember, there were, at that time, offshore England radio stations on abandoned oil platforms. Does anyone remember that era? And there's amateur illegal radio stations reaching the shores of England. And I listened to those a bit maybe like today's internet. You could just go on and listen to anyone saying anything with no supervision. And that was so I knew I wanted to write a story about a pirate radio station. But then the character, God knows where he came from. I still don't know after 30 years of thinking about it. And so really, I don't know where the idea came from. And in fact, the idea was just a drift until I hooked up with Sandy. And then he said, this could be a movie. And right, Sandy?
Well, it's, our first meeting is actually something that I remember like it was yesterday. It's so clear and so vivid for me.
Yeah.
It was, the history was, I received a treatment that was called Lean On Me, which had all sort of the basic ideas that were ultimately in the film Pump Up the Volume. And it was 45 pages. And I remember I was living in New York City at the time, and I was sort of, a colleague of mine said, this is so your taste, it's so your thing, take a look at this treatment. And I read this treatment and I tore through it. I found that the writing and the story both completely engaged and intrigued me. And I said, this is so a story that I want to tell. It's so my thing. And part of that for me was, again, what Alan had just sort of talked about, was a kid who had a pirate radio station and was broadcasting from his basement. For me as a kid at this, and when I was in my teenage years, the radio was sort of my understanding, the voice that there was a world outside the suburban neighborhood that I felt enslaved in at the time. And I remember there was a radio station at the time called WBAI out on Long Island, which broadcast, it was broadcast for the freaks and geeks of the world. And I, at night, would close the door, My parents wouldn't hear. I'd listen to this radio. I'd hear this whole other world out there. And I went, oh, there is somewhere over the rainbow. Oh, there is a place that I could escape to. And when as a kid, the radio was such a force for me that when I read this treatment, I was immediately taken by the story and by the conceit of the story. But what was lacking in it was there was an idea and there was a character. There was no third act of this movie. And movies, as you all know, are structured in a 3-act structure. And I arranged to have a meeting with Alan Moyle at the White Horse Tavern on West 11th Street, okay? Samantha, not far from where you used to live. And I met him, we sat down. Alan ordered a red glass of wine, okay, was wearing a white shirt. And at this meeting, what I always say to other producers as well is you've got to be prepared to have sort of your creative take on the material that you may be interested in producing. And at this meeting, I pitched what I thought would be a great third act to this movie. And Alan Moyle stood up and said, oh my God, and here I am, I'm nervous, I'm pitching to somebody that I don't know, a movie that I really want to get involved with. And Alan Moyle stands up, comes to bear hug me across the table. The red wine, of course, goes flying off the table all over his red shirt. And he said, we have to do this together. This is the movie I want to make, and I want to make it with you.
Wow. Oh, thank you, Sandy.
That was our first meeting.
And
wow, I wish I could remember it. Wow. Was that easy?
Yeah. Well, and what do you remember around what year this was?
1957. No, I'm not kidding. I can tell you exactly. We made the movie in 1989. And I believe that when I first met Alan Moyle, it was probably 1987. We probably worked on the script for a year, getting Christian, getting the financing, losing the financing, keeping Christian, finding Samantha. It was probably about a 2-year period, which in the terms of independent movies is short. That's a short period of time. So I think it was 1987, Alan Moyle.
Okay, and I'll ask Samantha now. I know she did mention to us.
My dog is barking. Yeah. Hi, everyone.
How did you first learn about Pump Up the Volume, and how was it through an audition? Was it through knowing Sandy?
It was just the old-fashioned way. It was through an audition. I had been in Europe backpacking that summer, and I came back and was told that I had an audition the next day, and got the script and read it and was so excited about this material, and also cross-eyed, jet-lagged, and came to this pre-production space on Pico Boulevard in West LA, and was waiting outside the audition room, and the casting director came out and said, I think you're perfect for this. I think you're tired. You look really tired. Go get some sleep and come back in a day or two. And so that's what I did. But I was immediately just completely taken with the material. And just as an aside, it's so funny, Sandy, as you're telling that story, it really, the world, it's obviously changed so much. I'm just thinking back to when I was a teenager, 14 or 15, and my best friend Ben and I at the time, we had a date to call each other on the phone and listen to Dr. Ruth Westheimer on Sunday nights, to listen to her radio show, which was like the most provocative, compelling, scintillating, naughty thing to do. Such a sweet, innocent time thinking back on it. But yeah, the power of radio, you just really brought brought it back to me how powerful it was. So I was very compelled by the material, and then I came in and I read for Sandy and Alan.
Okay, now time out. Here's the backstory that you all should know about this is that, and we'll probably get into how Christian Slater got involved in the project, blah, 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 blah. But let's, for the moment, for the Samantha Mathis part of the conversation, assume Christian is on board, he's cast. We need to find our Nora, okay? And as you all know, Nora is so key to the movie working. And we saw every girl in Hollywood, every girl that had a name, that was a star, that we saw everybody. I remember Drew Barrymore came in dying to play this role, okay?
And wept.
And we were like, I don't think so. She's not our Nora. And we kept getting closer and closer to the date of production, and we didn't have our Nora. And our casting director, Judith Holstra, kept saying to us, relax, guys, I've got the girl, I've got her, she's traveling, she'll be here. And we were like, oh yeah, right, okay, we've seen everybody at this point. The other really interesting part of the casting of Samantha in this movie was we've always saw this role innately as a brunette, as a dark-haired young woman. And Samantha Mathis, as you can all see, is a blonde and born and raised as a blonde. And Judith Holster said, she's blonde. Okay, we were gonna, whatever that is, we'll deal with that when we meet her. But every time we had a girl come in to audition, Alan and I would sit there and they would do the scene, and then we would ask them some questions about their lives. You know, where did they grow up? And what school did they go to? And what was it like in high? And we got a sense of their vibe and their essence and their being. We're now down to the wire. Samantha Mathis comes back in after her sort of one night of sleep, comes in and literally just blows us away. And we are like, what? Who is this girl? Like, what? We were speechless. And she left the room. That was it. And Alan and I looked at each other and we were like, oh my God. And then I said, Alan, we didn't ask her a question. We have no sense of who this girl is other than the Nora that she presented in the room. And he said, and we were just sort of like, oh, well, you know, that's sort of the way it's going to be, I guess. We don't know. So the second part of this audition was that there were 3 girls that we were interested in. They were all going to come back in and read opposite Christian Slater. And we obviously had to get a chemistry read and see what was what. So we leave this audition. Samantha, I don't know if you remember this story or not, but a week goes by before the final callback. And as we all know, nobody walks in LA. Okay, you don't run into people on the street in LA. And I can count the number of times I've been to the beach in Los Angeles. I was going to the beach and I was crossing the PCH in front of Patrick's Roadhouse. And I go, oh my God, that's Samantha Mathis. That's Samantha. And I'm here by myself. I'm going to the beach and I walk over to her. Now, and I used a line from the movie. And I don't remember exactly what the line was, but it was, are you really as horny as a 10-peckered owl? Or something like that. And
Is
Samantha
it really big as a baby's arm?
Right. And Samantha turned around and went, who are you? Like, where
like,
am I?
Okay, freak.
And she did not connect the dots that was a line from the movie, nor that I was the producer of the movie. But here it was, by complete chance, we run into each other on a street corner in Los Angeles out at the beach. And I had my moment and moments to talk to Samantha and got a sense of who she was and where she's been and what she's up to. And then to finish the story, she comes back in, she reads with Christian, and it was a no-brainer. And Samantha Mathis was then sent to get her hair colored. And where
did we do the screen test, Sandy?
Where did we do the screen
The
test?
Holiday Inn Hotel in a hotel room
Oh,
on
right.
Wilshire Boulevard. I remember when my father said, "You went to test for a movie in a hotel," and I said, I know what it sounds like, but it was real. There were cameras. Christian Slater was there. Nothing happened, Dad. I swear it was a real audition.
Oh, how cute.
Hmm.
Oh, kisses.
Oh, sorry, guys. It's just, she's a puppy. Oh, Annie, come here.
There's already a question that's come
You
in.
remember the hair colorist's name, Samantha?
We're gonna need to meet this
Michelle?
puppy.
Michelle
His-
Bueller.
No, a
No.
tall gay guy. I wish I could remember his name.
Oh,
Well, that
Ron?
narrows it down.
Don Dwyer.
Don Dwyer. Thank you.
Don
Rest in
Dwyer.
Don
peace.
Dwyer.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And you know how we got Don Dwyer? Just so, I mean, this is like so inside, we could move on, but it was Walt Lloyd's wife's hair colorist.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Fun
And Walt
fact.
Lloyd was our cinematographer who had just come off of shooting Sex, Lies, and Videotape.
Right.
Well, we will move on, but there is a question about Samantha's dog or puppy. What is his or her name?
Her name is Annie.
All right.
She's
well,
a year old. She turned a year in September. She came from Abaco in the Bahamas. She was born right after the Hurricane Dorian. She's coming back. Let's see if she's going to make an appearance. And I was in Abaco, Bahamas last Christmas volunteering with people post hurricane, and I knew I was going to get a puppy there, and I found her. Yeah, Annie from Abaco.
Annie from Abaco.
Mm-hmm. Here she
Okay.
comes. Okay.
All right. Well, she can. Nope.
Yep.
There she is.
There she is.
Oh,
Okay. So, Samantha, you got the role. You're playing opposite of Christian Slater, and so Alan. Now that the film is, you're getting into filming, and the script's done and everything. I guess I'm sort of curious. I know I asked you sort of the origin of the story, but were Mark and Nora based on anyone in your life, or were they mostly fictional characters just to add into the story?
mostly fictional. I mean, I had the gay kid who killed himself was a person I knew, shot himself, and that reminds me of the story of one of Sandy's great courageous breakthroughs. Somebody offered to make the movie with us as long as we turned that guy straight. Do you remember that, Sandy?
Oh, very well.
Yeah, very well.
We had a studio that was willing to finance the movie, that was ready to go. And this was, again, before the days of cell phones. And I remember I was at a payphone in a movie theater in East Hampton. And the financier said to me, "If the guy is gay, we're not making the movie." And I remember saying to him, "Well, I guess you're not making the movie."
Bravo.
And that was the end of that company.
Yeah, and I guess I'd like to know, from the audience as well. I mean, once you've started making, the film and going on, I mean, it takes place in Arizona, but it was shot in California, and sort of something that I came across being a Minnesotan was the high school is named the Hubert H. Humphrey High School, and Christian Slater's, persona is Happy Hard Harry. And I just wondered with the triple H's and the Minnesota reference to the former senator, if that was just by coincidence or if that was sort of by design.
You remember, Sandy? We had quite a bit of title. We had quite a bit of problems with the title of the movie, Pump Up the Volume. We could get into that if you like. But no, I don't recall. The senator, Humphrey's name was H in the middle, right? Was it?
Yes.
I think that's just an accident.
I will just say nothing in movies is just by chance. Okay, these were discussions and conversations, and Alan and I remember going through all of this together, even though this was like, 130 years ago. But what I think is equally interesting about where the movie, we set the movie was supposed to be just anywhere USA. But because we had financing that was going to restrict us to shooting the movie in Los Angeles, we chose a location that would sort of be somewhat not in Los Angeles, but look like it could be the middle of Arizona. And what I think is oddly timely today, November 14th, we shot the movie, we scouted the movie to be in the zone in Los Angeles, and it was shot at the Saugus High School to double for a school, HHH, in Arizona. And a year ago today was the shooting at that particular high school. That was all over the media. The high school shooting was at Saugus High School, which is where we shot Pump Up the Volume. And in today's LA Times, it's the actual anniversary of that shooting. Kind of wild. And I still have just to go back to your original question, I still have my jacket that has the Hubert Humphrey High insignia on it.
Obviously, Sound Unseen is a music film festival, and Pump Up the Volume, has, music connotation in its title. And I know that there's probably people wondering about the music in the film, because when you watch it now, I mean, it still is relevant again with the music and the bands that are in there. And, at the time, the soundtrack was very popular. You had the Pixies, Sonic Youth, Soundgarden, Concrete Blonde. I mean, even Ice-T, Mark's theme music is Leonard Cohen's Everybody Knows. And I know that the music supervisor, Kathy Nelson, played a huge part into this, but talk about the music in the film actually, and how you were able to sort of get some of these bands to contribute to the soundtrack. And if you wrote these certain songs for specific scenes, or if they were just sort of like the songs that you had on hand.
The opening titles was written for the Leonard Cohen song because I knew the song very well because my wife had mixed it. So that was just luck. And then, of course, the studio didn't want to use that song because it was so dark. And they asked us, if memory serves me, to re-record it with somebody brighter than and more pop and more hip than Leonard. And we did. And we, speaking for myself, I was disappointed. And then I don't remember, but we managed to put Leonard back in at the beginning of the movie and snuck the other song, the other version of the song, since we'd already paid for it, in somewhere else. Is that your memory, Sandy?
I think it was Concrete Blonde, right? Who did the cover.
Really? Concrete Blonde,
yeah.
re-singing it, right?
But I will just say this, is the music in the movie is a complete credit to our director. This is it. All of the music in this movie is so reflective of Alan Moyle's musical tastes, and he drove that soundtrack to what it is and what it was. And it's, his sensibility, his vibe. He spent a lot of time with Kathy finding those songs, finding the right songs. Of course, he's going to be critical of what he didn't like, but the music in this movie is spectacular. And that is really a credit to, a lot of people don't think of directors as really having to have a large music vocabulary. And Alan Moyle is a music guy. And he knows music, and he knows cool music, and he made the music in this movie really work.
And
Sandy,
and Samantha, when you were in the film, I mean, were you listening to the Pixies and Soundgarden and Leonard Cohen?
No, I wasn't. I'm just thinking about how incredibly cool and hip and edgy and ahead of its time the soundtrack was. I was definitely listening to alternative music, but I don't think I knew about the Pixies yet. I don't think I did. I think I was just coming on to to that stuff. I'd listened. God, it's hard to think about what I was listening to in '89, but no, I wasn't in every possible way. I wasn't as cool as Nora was, and I think that was, looking back on it now, it's just kind of incredible how cool that soundtrack is. There's nothing quite like it at that time.
Right.
Samantha is kind of cool as Nora, I just have to say.
Yeah, that's why you got the part.
I didn't feel that cool.
Well,
and yeah, I mean, this is a film that's, very hard to find, to view. It's not available on any streaming sites. Again, I showed up the DVD I have. I know a few people have VHS copies, but is it not widely available on streaming because of the music?
The answer to that is yes. Yes, because of all the rights clearances, and it was made by New Line, which was absorbed by Warner's, and now it's just sort of caught in it wasn't set up, all of those deals and all of those rights clearances were not set up for what the future, which is now, which is streaming, and we never got clearances to do it, to have the movie stream.
I mean, could we start a petition to make that happen?
Knock yourself out. I guess so. Make a, yeah. I think there's a lot of financial decisions that go into that from the Warner's brass that I'm not quite sure how to go about doing that. But sure, all three of you that are listening in, we want your name on that petition, okay? I have to say also, I loved your website where you had 1 hour and 42 minutes to pump up the volume. It was like, I felt like we were going on live for the Oscars today. It was great. Okay.
Well, this was a big deal for us here at Sound Unseen. And again, we're sort of at the halfway point of this conversation. And yeah, this is a film that means a lot to so many people out there. I can't emphasize that enough. And I know that, some of the issues is obviously it's not widely accessible to people because, like you said, we are now in a streaming, platform, society, and we want things now and we want them on demand. But, there is something about going back and revisiting films and, taking out physical copies of VHS and even Laserdisc and, DVDs. I mean, so, the fact that this film, is still 30 years old and is still widely considered a huge cult classic and one that even predates the internet or even podcasts, which, all of that is thriving now. So, I mean, I look at it as like, with Mark's pirated radio, like you were sort of starting this new revelation of connecting with people virtually as we are on this call. And so, did you think 30 years ago when you were making the film that you would be on a Zoom call talking about this film?
In the midst of a global pandemic? Yeah, that's exactly what I forecast.
So.
No, absolutely not. The answer is absolutely not, no. And it is, again, I know Samantha and I have talked about it, Alan Moyle and I have talked about it. This is the beauty of what we get to do as filmmakers, is you get to tell stories that really touch and move people and make differences and can change and inspire. And this is a movie that does speak to a lot of people. And, it's for me, it was my first movie, and it's what hooked me into I call it the addictive nature of this business, but the impact and sort of 30 years later of still seeing how it moves people is really quite something. So thank you for hosting us today, and thank you for, having us be part of this weird remote world that we're living in to celebrate our anniversary.
Yeah. And I mean, I would love to, Alan, to get your thoughts as well, because I mean, some of the dialogue in this film is incredible. I mean, even the opening line in this movie is, you ever get the feeling that everything in America is completely fucked up? I mean, if you just think about that for a second, I mean, I think there's so many people that would, say that it is.
You see the poster behind Sandy's head? He's written, he's there, but not as the writer or the co-writer, because the union wouldn't allow me to share writing credit. In those days, that union was angry at how many directors were stealing and producers were asking to piggyback onto writers' credits. And so they were very hard that year on the original writer is the original writer. But Sandy, in fact, wrote half the movie and all the witticisms are his. Now, maybe I wrote that first line, I think so. But anything funny and weird came from Sandy.
Alan Moyle.
We wrote it together.
Okay, wrong. Okay, this is how I remember this. It's,
okay.
Two things. First of all, this is the original poster and it is signed by Alan Moyle, Samantha Mathis, and Christian Slater. Number one. Number two is, and Alan has heard me say this to him, Alan's writing is spectacular, and his dialogue and his way with words. I've worked with writers for 30 years, and I've never had the experience I had working with Alan Moyle. And he is truly gifted and brilliant and can write a line that as wows you on the page is as strong as it is when it's in Nora's eyes and body. Yes, we work together on the screenplay, but the brilliance of the screenplay and the dialogue is Alan Moyle.
Sandy, you're the one with all the witticisms. Check. I mean, you and your brother. Okay, will you at least admit that while we were working on the script, and we worked on it together for a year, right?
Yes, we
that
did.
Deserves some recognition. You've already said it.
Yes, but I still give
we wrote. We wrote together.
Yeah, we had a great time. We had a great the bigger sort of thing that this brings up for me is the experience of making this movie. From its inception to its development to shooting to post was a charmed and amazing experience for all of us. It's a testament that Samantha Mathis, who's sitting there, if she were in Los Angeles, we'd be celebrating Thanksgiving together. How many Thanksgiving dinners have we had together over the years?
My God, so many.
We have such a friendship and such a history, and we're still all enjoying being with each other. And Alan and I are still working on something, not the sequel, but something else. But it was just for me, it was my first, and I'm still looking to repeat that experience. It was as good as it gets in movie making.
Yeah, and I'll ask Samantha, because this question just came in. You have a long list of credits that include some really well-known titles. Where does this film rank in terms of what people recognize you for?
I mean, it's in the top. I would say it's the top one or two. It's really, I think that the character was so vivid and dynamic and unique that she made an indelible impression upon people. So I've got a lot of fans that would be the film that they remember me for, which I'm very proud of.
Yeah, and I mean, this was your first of 3 films with Christian Slater, even though one of them was, which I didn't know until I did research, was Fern Gully, an animated film. But you guys reappeared in John Woo's Broken Arrow. And talk about acting with Christian on Pump Up the Volume to Broken Arrow, and how much you had changed as an actress as well.
Oh my goodness. Well, so much had changed between the time of doing Pump Up the Volume. I mean, that was for all intents and purposes my first film. So I was green, and thrilled and terrified, and Christian and I became involved during that movie. So there was quite a lot of chemistry, and I think you see that. We were young and passionate and excited, and so that was all going on. When we did Broken Arrow at that point, we were friends, and I felt like I was making a movie with my brother. I felt like I was in a very safe working relationship with someone who I trusted, who had also gone through some personal changes at that point, had gotten sober. So Christian was a different person. I had a few more films under my belt, and it was just a different kind of relationship. And we were buddies. He was like my brother.
Okay, and this is sort of a follow-up as well. In the true spirit of the movie, it will continue to be pirated and passed around. So watch hard. That's what someone says.
Oh, good.
And Samantha, great performance begs additional roles. How did this movie assist in your career?
It launched my career. This movie put me on the map. I had been doing television up until that point, but this movie made quite a loud splash in Hollywood, and we had a premiere at Grauman's Chinese Theater. I remember the red dress that I bought for that premiere. And I remember that premiere post party and the agents sort of swarming around me. It put me on the map. It changed my life. Absolutely, 100%. So thank you, Alan, and thank you, Sandy.
Someone else just asked, would love to hear everyone's favorite line from the film.
You're really as horny as a 10-peckered owl has always stayed with me.
Cock ring is mine, I think. Samantha?
I mean, it's part of the poem. Jack me, Jack, but now I'm not remembering it. Push me, pull me, talk hard.
Kiss me, kill me, talk hard.
Kiss me, kill me. Oh, kiss me, kill me. So good. So good, Alan. I
mean, there are so many memorable lines. I mean, the fit hits the Shan. I'm a member of the Why Bother generation myself. As I mentioned, the opening line from the film, I've got my blackjack in my diet, Pepsi Wild Cherry, or Wild Cherry Diet Pepsi. I mean, yeah, again, this film just has so many great moments, and it really speaks to a generation that, for people that haven't seen this film that might be watching, I mean, it is something that they should see, because it also, I think, brings so many different people together, because people can go back and sort of think about life in high school, whether if you were popular or unpopular, if you were, a jock, if you were a dork or a geek, or, I mean, we all associate with, people that we went to high school with, and everyone goes to high school. And, this is a film that can keep, sparking new conversations, new generations in watching it. And yeah, the question that has been asked too is, why was there never a follow-up or any type of sequel or spin-off, given its sort of cult status? And, what would this film look like in 2020?
Sandy?
Well, just to go back to a moment, every one of those lines, Jim, that you sort of excerpted from the movie were all Alan Moyleisms. Okay, so going back to our sharing of the credit of the movie, Alan Moyle, every one of those lines. Okay. I could say to him, no, make this one better, or can you shade this a little bit more gray, and then he would take that direction and he would come back with a line that would be like, are you really as horny as a 10-packer now? Come on. I mean, I couldn't write that. That being said is, you know, we've talked about a sequel on and off over the years. Alan and I just recently reconnected about doing a possible TV series inspired by Pump Up the Volume, which never really took flight. Christian has talked about it. Samantha has always sort of, you know, lobbied for one, but sometimes we just couldn't quite find what that is and how that would live and where it would live. But that being said, is the story will live on, and the movie, as Jim, you know, and Alan knows, and Samantha knows, is something that I've been working on as a musical that we hope is bound for the Broadway once the world figures itself out. We were just about to have our premiere at the Pittsburgh Playhouse for the musical, which is very true to the movie without obviously the brilliant music that we had in the movie, but this will be a theatrical telling of the story for the theater that I'm very excited about, and can really say another reason, why haven't you guys done a sequel? I don't have the answer to that other than it's not ruled out, but it's not happening at the moment.
Okay. Yeah, and I was actually going to bring up the musical, Sandy, so thank you for bringing that up.
I'm very excited about it, and it's something that I think that is very true to the movie, and the original music that has been written to go with the piece is spectacular. So I'm very excited about it. And it's just a funny thing to be still having conversations about Nora and Mark and how this scene could work and how this scene could work better and what do we want from them, and just living back in a weird time warp and yet feeling that I'm still in that movie.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, my fear is that someone else is going to remake this and royally fuck it up. So I hope that never happens. But you know, if there were an offshoot, if there was a spin-off, you know, that might be something that I guess could be possible, attainable. But you know, we'll just wait patiently, and maybe something will happen. Maybe something won't. The questions have been like coming in fast and furious now, so I'll try to get through a few more here.
Great.
This is for Samantha. Alan and Sandy envisioned a brunette for the role, and you were blonde. Did you care that they wanted to dye your hair, or was it just no worries?
No, it was not a question that we were making me brunette. I feel I know I completely agreed. I wasn't. That's my recollection. And then I feel like I had the same idea, but you came to me and said, no, she's got to be brunette, and or black haired, and I was like, yes, no, of course she has to be. What ended up happening in my career for a long time is that after Pump Up the Volume, I went back to blonde, and I'd walk into rooms to audition for people, and they'd go, but your hair, why is it blonde? And they always wanted me dark haired. That's just the impression that they had of me. But no, absolutely, I wanted to be dark haired for the part. It just, that even if Nora had been naturally blonde, she would have dyed her hair that color, you know.
Interesting.
It's just part of her rebellious streak.
Okay. Another question, I guess one that seems, I don't know, I think pretty easy, but was the principal always considered the villain?
Alan, Annie Ross, may she rest in peace.
Yeah.
Okay, Annie
I was
Ross,
just
who died
tripping
this
enough. She
year.
got the part. She was elbowed into the movie by my manager and your friend, and she wasn't perfect. That was a compromise, and she's really a famous jazz singer, not an actress.
But
What was the
yes,
question again?
yes,
Was
Yes.
she always the bad guy?
Yeah, it was the
Yes.
principal. Yeah.
yeah. She
And
was
the,
definitely our antagonist, and we needed that resistance, and
Yeah.
we needed to have somebody. At
and
the
he added
center.
that to the story.
So
I like that
blame me.
other character that
Don't
was
blame
the
me.
science teacher. What was his name?
Oh,
The counselor.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. What a trip he was. Eh? He's a total Sandy invention.
next
Anyway,
question. What's the next
Okay.
question?
Next question. This is very much a product of the time, and one would argue that would be nearly impossible to be made now. Can you talk about how the landscape of the film is different than in 1990?
that's a good question. Sandy, you follow you.
I would
you
say
read, right?
this. Can you read me that question again?
Yes, this is very much a product of the time, and one would argue that it would be nearly impossible to be made now. Can you talk about the landscape of the film, and it is different now than in 1990?
Well, I would say to you that the fundamental difference in the landscape would be the following. This movie was made in 1989, and we made it for approximately $6 million. The movie could get made now because I've made 2 high school movies subsequent to Pump Up the Volume. But the single biggest difference right now is this movie would have to be made for $600,000.
Mm.
The budget would be, a fraction of what we got to make it for, and it would have to be equally cast with, a Christian Slater and a Samantha Mathis. But high school movies are getting made that are edgy, that are about relevant things. It's just made on different scales.
Okay.
I mean, I think looking at that question in a different way, Jim, it's, the landscape of media is just entirely different. So what would be what it, and then this comes back to the conversation we were having at the beginning, and when Sandy was recounting his experiences of being in his room alone and listening to a radio show, and how profound that was to hear that person in the night and coming out of the radio and deeply affecting you. What would be that version of someone who could be so dangerous as to affect people in that way in a time when, as Alan said, we have anyone can put anything out now and say anything. So the ability for someone to really capture people's imagination in that way is just where we live in a very different landscape.
Right. And I mean, in 1990, again, the internet didn't exist. People
Right.
still had, landline telephones. We didn't have cell phones. So yeah, we got entertainment from the few channels that we had on our TV and the radio. So
Right.
to try to modernize this, I mean, I don't think that there is a film or any music or any podcasts that are, anything that's outlandish in 2020, quite frankly. So, what's the pitch in order to sort of make something that would stand out in today's times versus 30 years ago? Let's see.
I mean,
here.
I guess if I don't know what the answer is there. And believe me, I've thought about this a lot, Jim, because I have had so many fans come to me and say, we want a sequel. And I've thought about what could a sequel look like? What would a sequel be? Well, now in 2020, they want to know who Mark grew up to become, how did Mark evolve? What aspects of his, character and his ethos did he stay true to, or did he compromise? And the same for Nora, and you could go in so many different ways. And what would it look like for someone to start a revolution? But I will say that while the power of a voice on the radio and seeing it in that traditional way is hard to imagine, I then think of the kids down in Florida and the young woman Emma Gonzalez, and what the youth has been able to do in terms of speaking out truth to power, and that's been radical. That's been really radical, and they've used social media in a way to get their voices out. So if I'm just realizing it as I say this, it's a different version of speaking truth to power. But I think we see really powerful movements among young people. Greta Thunberg, you know, and how she's spoken truth to the patriarchy and the establishment, and saying, you know, enough. So yeah, I bet both those young women would appreciate Pump Up the Volume.
Alan, start writing that sequel.
Maybe when we have our first meeting in that gay bar.
Well, I've got to start the campaign first, right?
Yeah.
This is sort of a interesting question. Any outtake stories to share from filming?
It's been a few years, Jim.
I know. Hey, this is a question from the audience. This isn't one that I had. Sorry. Well, sorry I stumped everyone. Or sorry.
No, I mean, there's lots of snippets.
I know. I had control over the edit. And so I don't think there's any scenes that we were forced to remove. Sandy, do you recall?
You know, an interesting story that I can share is, because Alan had referenced it earlier, there was one actor that we flew from New York to play our gay character in the movie who kills himself. And when we actually went to test the movie, the completed version of the movie, we found that scene did not work. And it was so key and pivotal to the movie working, that when we tested the movie, we were somewhere way out in the valley doing a test screening of the movie, and we were asking questions about this scene, and the comments that we were getting were not, again, sort of, they were basically in favor of us reshooting that scene, or it was not working correctly, re-editing it, whatever it was. And this is another kind of great story, is Alan Moyle were up on the stage doing a Q&A after the test screening of the movie. And there was a kid in the audience who was talking and commenting about that particular scene in the movie and why it didn't work. And I whispered to Alan Moyle on the stage, I said, Alan, that's our guy. That's the kid we should reshoot this scene with. He is the gay kid in the movie that is now in Pump Up the Volume. From a test screening in the Valley, a non-professional actor, we did reshoot that key pivotal scene in the movie.
Wow, that's quite an outtake.
Yeah.
Quite an outtake, okay? And it was just people, when I tell people that story, it's because the kid in the movie is so beautiful in that scene, and it so works. And it was a scene that, and I remember Alan Moyle said to me, I just wasn't on it that day. Something was not right. And then we reshot it and it worked, and the whole movie sort of fell into place. I know that's not the answer to the question, but I thought it was a pretty good pivot and an interesting story about how movies change and what doesn't get in the movie.
Right. No, and I'll ask two more questions, and we'll sort of wrap up here. I guess this is for everyone, but I guess I'd love to hear from Samantha first. Obviously, at the end of the film, you and Mark get taken away by the police, and the whole city, the whole community is changed by Mark and yours actions. Do you think you two, just in the fictional Pump Up the Volume world, stay together?
It'd be nice to think that they do, wouldn't it? I don't know.
Yeah, Sandy, Alan, do you have any thoughts on what happens to these characters after the movie ends?
I don't like the idea of thinking of them in the future, even though, as Samantha said, it would be fascinating to contrive a story where we meet up with them 40 or 50 years later, and that would be freakish. But I think the ending of this story is satisfying to me. Sandy?
Same.
Okay.
I don't have that answer. So,
And the last minute in the movie where all the little voices are coming up, that's very pre-internet analogously, is it not?
correct.
And it's also pretty trippy that we'd hear these voices.
Yeah, and yeah, it's just more people are breaking out and they're getting their voices heard, and that's sort of the point of the movie.
That's the point of the internet. Everything.
I mean, yeah, we're on this call through wires and cables, and who knows how it all works, but it works.
A series of tubes, Jim.
Yes, series of tubes. Let's make that movie too. All right. Well, and obviously, I think people watching. What is everyone up to now during this pandemic? And Samantha, I know you're on Billions, but Sandy and Alan would love to know if you guys are working on anything in quarantine during this pandemic, or what's next for all of you.
My big problem these days is I've discovered marijuana. So I get high nearly every day. And it cuts into your writing. So, but I couldn't be happier, actually. Got a great wife, got 4 animals, and I live here in a nice neighborhood. So that's what I'm doing, living. Writing a bit, writing as slowly as humanly possible. And Sandy?
I am working on many different things at all different sort of points in their development at the moment, from a TV show to 2 features and to my Pump Up the Volume, the musical. And I'm also on the faculty at the AFI Conservatory where I teach producing.
I'll just add, Jim, because your viewers might find it interesting, as a COVID story, that I was meant to be doing a play, a musical with the music written by Duncan Sheik in New York City, and we were closed down the first night of our performances on March the 12th. The theater was shut down when we were about to do our first preview. So that was the last thing that I was working on. And I did just get asked to do a reading of a book that a director, I think both of you know, Michael Almereyda, is going to direct if we don't get shut down, for the 92nd Street Y, which will be a sort of an interesting combination of theater meets film.
And Samantha, where did you meet that director, Michael Almereyda?
I met that director, interestingly enough, when I was at the Deauville Film Festival with Sandy Stern.
Thank you.
And Pump Up the Volume.
Correct.
Yes. So it's all coming full circle.
It's a small, small world. That's what I
Yes,
always
it
say
is.
about Hollywood. And
Indeed.
It's all about your relationships. And it's just, again, I always go back to this being my first movie and such a part of me and the people that I got to work with and know and love and be with today. It's all in time for a good Thanksgiving.
Let me say one more thing. Thank you, Sandy, for reminding me that it was fun.
We had a great time, Alan.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, no, thank you, Alan Moyle, writer, director, producer Sandy Stern, actress Samantha Mathis. Thank you for taking time to talk to Sound Unseen about Pump Up the Volume, a film that means a lot to a lot of people out there. So,
And
thank you
start
so
that
much.
petition now, please.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much for
Jim.
giving us an opportunity to talk to each other and see each other. And thank you everybody
Yes.
who showed up with questions and interests. Yeah.
And we are working on that sequel, people.
Yeah. Guys, call me.
All right. Well, and stay safe, everyone, as well. So,
Thank
best
you.
wishes. So,
Thank you for
thank you
hosting.
again.
Bye.
Happy holidays.
Yes.